Hello, everybody. Let's talk about chapters 5 and 6. I hope you saw my note that I skipped 3 and 4. I've taught special ed 323 before, and I'm not sure if you've had it or not, but those chapters are covered there, and because of me, we're a little bit behind. And so it made sense to me to skip those chapters and to move on to 5 and 6. However, I am going to go back to chapters 3 and 4 and videotape something for you. I don't want you to think you're getting short shrift. And I will make some comments specifically about the subjects of collaboration and co-teaching and parent involvement from the standpoint of working with students who have severe, profound disabilities as a focus. Okay? All right, so I think if I could say this best, these two chapters, are about quality of life for people with disabilities, severe disabilities. I should make that distinction because it's an important one. Historically speaking, people with disabilities, particularly those with severe disabilities, were acted upon. They were given services. It was as if they just threw things at them. So they need to make a sandwich. They need to make a bed. They need to what there was a lot of services, tasks taught, things like that, but they weren't very integrated. And more importantly, there really wasn't the push that you find now to look at quality of life as an indicator of success. And equally as important, making sure that the things that you're teaching and working on with students transfers from their school to their community life, which is why, as we'll talk about transition this semester, it's so important for us to make sure that transitions are successful, that we have planned ahead to make certain that the supports that a person needs are in the community, they're available and easy for family, guardians, group home people, whoever, to access. So again, that's sort of a different twist. I don't think that when I started in this profession, as silly as it sounds, quality of life and ensuring that people with disabilities had choice and things like that were actually rather avant-garde. Now we think of it as just being a part of the way things are, but it's not that way a lot of places, and I'm sure you're aware of that. There are lots of places that still act upon kids with disabilities, and particularly those kids with severe, profound disabilities, because maybe movement is limited, communication is limited. It's hard to tell what the intent is of a person's behavior. All of those things that are significant for students who have severe, profound disabilities makes it really easy to act on them. I mean, they might protest, they might, get rigid or throw something or whatever, but by and large, you really can sort of act on them and just become, in a sense, and I don't mean it negatively, but kind of a caretaker, a prison guard, and I say that jokingly. I don't mean that they're like prisoners, but I do mean that it's sort of a routinized procedure or set of procedures and protocols that are in place that basically make the person with excuse me, it's right there, that makes the person with a severe disability a recipient. And so they're not active in making their whole life, their own life, work for them the way that they want. They are recipients of what other people choose to believe or decide, or even, just best guess. They make those decisions oftentimes about what makes a person happy rather than the person who lives in that body and in that life and in that community. And so, self-determination is a very big part of that. And I would just like to emphasize that as a classroom teacher, one of the easiest things that you can do is build choice making into everything. Because, I'll tell you what, my sense of choice making being so important is that you're basically learning how to manage two variables at the same time, right? I can have cottage cheese or I can have ice cream. I can tell you which one I choose. But I basically have these variables that I'm looking at the same time. As simple as that sounds to us, right, in our ability levels, being able to take a person who tends to have singular focus on something like this, doesn't notice anything going on here, we're actually breaking up that scheme a little bit. So I'm always a big believer in choice making just because of the variables, just because students will look at that and they will realize that in life there are choices, that we can have this or we can have that. It also teaches, along with that, yes or no, which is hugely, hugely important. For people with disabilities who have limited to no communication, they can at least indicate their pleasure or displeasure with something by learning yes, no. So try to do that everywhere. One of the things that the chapters are very clear about are making sure that your functional goals that you make for someone come from two places. One, okay, so we have this state standard idea, meaning we're all on the curriculum and we have testing, et cetera, et cetera. So there is the idea that we're looking at goals within that framework. But more importantly, we're looking at what kinds of skills a person needs to accomplish and to internalize to be independent. So if you look at what the text is talking about, here's what I think. Well, kind of a cheat, but I think it's easier. I think it's much easier to choose the functional goal, right? And then once you've seen what a person needs, go back and look at the standards. Actually, put another way, I think looking at the standards is very interactive. And what I'm saying is sometimes I look at standards and they're really good ideas for activities and things. I'm like, wow, that's really great. Other times I'm just looking at the standard to see if I can get something to match up with what I know a student needs. So that's really kind of what I'm talking about. But you always want to make sure that if you're going to be teaching a functional skill, that it can be generalized, meaning that they can do it in more than one place. So if you're teaching somebody how to boil water, okay, they need to be able to transfer that somewhere else. Or if you're teaching a person, I'm trying to think of a good one right now. Oh, like different fire signs, for example. If you're teaching them about what a sign is that indicates there's fire or fire alarm, then you need to help them generalize that to other places where the sign may look different, the alarm may look different, so that this person that you're working with begins to generalize the skill and can use it in places where they need to be able to protect their own safety. And another thing is integrating. If you can integrate the skill, that's fantastic, okay? An idea, for example, of integrating a skill, we might be having one of your students in the cafeteria, counting milk or something like that, right? So where they're taking a skill that in the classroom is counting, blocks or something in this case. Here they're going to integrate the skill into a setting so that they're still counting and they're still working on counting, but they're doing it in the context of work. Okay, so that might even be something that they could take on as a work skill, is that they, can count to 10 or count to 15 and pack things within a crate. Simple skills, but if you're looking at building a resume, these are things that you can say, skills that we've been teaching, but we've also integrated. Of course, it's always best to integrate in the community. If you can do that, it's always best to integrate in the community. And frankly, as much as we preach generalization, because it's so important, I will also tell you that for many of the students I've had at this level, generalization is just really, really hard. Pretty much in my experience, you have to teach them every time they go to a no building, this is what the fire signal or thing looks like. If it's different. If they've learned it one way, that's fine. But the generalization, not so good. So any chance that you have to teach skills in the real setting, so that I'm sorry, I just went. I thought it was going down. Did I just black out for a second? No, but let's keep going. But any skills that you're going to teach, taught in the community setting or in the place where it's going to happen, you're going to get the best bang for your buck every single time. So the basic things that you teach, you hope transfer. Okay, putting things in measuring cups. Making sure that learning how to sort clothes by colors, okay? So maybe over here one's color and over here one's white, and you put the whites next to that one and you put colors next to that one. I don't know. You can come up with 1,001 things. By the way, when I say just choose a standard that will work, color matching color to color and sorting things and etc. Those were all math goals. If you look at early childhood, those are math goals. So, I mean, you'll be surprised how many things that you can teach from a functional perspective that will still have a direct tie into a state standard or some sort of goal that's set forth for us to meet by the state. Let's see, I'm just trying to think if I also have put on D2L the support scale, the supports intensity scale. It's just a copy that I found of that you can look at, because I want you to understand the difference again between supports and services, because they're really quite different, and I want you to see how they look different. And I also put up something, I think I called it functional skills curriculum or something, but anyway, it's from the state of Arkansas. So unfortunately, the standards they're using are not our state standards. However, whoever did this, it's great. They have come up with just tons of activities that you can do to meet the state standards in Arkansas. And although state standards are different, I mean, it is still math, it is still science. So many of the activities I think there might be really helpful for you to utilize. Okay, just give me a minute. I need to move this over for a second and see. Oh, a couple of things too. I also wanted you to think about, let's see if I put it here somewhere. Yeah, the ecological inventory. I put something up about that too. Take a look. I put something up about the ecological inventory. An ecological inventory is a really great thing to do, especially when you have kids who are not verbal. Because what you do is you start following the lead of the kids. You start watching where they go. Do they light up when somebody comes into the room? Do they cry when somebody comes into the room? Do they get excitable when the music on in a good way? Do they get excitable in a bad way, right? Part of an ecological inventory is basically looking at the kinds of things that are in your room, how you can use the activities that are there to promote inclusion of the students in what would be like rewarding activities, but things they would also learn within that. I'm going to see if I can pull that up really quick. Yeah, here we go. I like the way the sample I gave you, it's very short, but basically it's in the domain of leisure, and they list the sub-environments, like the locker room, changing clothes, a locker, showering, what the skills are, etc., etc. And what they do in this example, and what I would encourage you to do besides what I just noted, which is looking at the things that are there available, watching people, etc. The part I guess I forgot to mention till I looked at that is the importance of breaking down the environment for everything the environment has to offer. Okay? What I mean by that is, if you're in the locker room and you have to learn how to put your lock on or something, you can do a whole number lesson on that, right? If it's something about getting towels here or whatever, or working something out with them that you can pick up towels and do that as a task, that's a part of your experience in the locker room. If it's changing clothes, of course, there are things. Showering, you'd have to be careful if they're with other students, obviously, but for many students that I've worked with, you have to help them shower. If showering is a part of their school, they're not going to do it by themselves. So, like I said, that could be, well, that'd be inappropriate to do around other guys, I think, just because it wouldn't bring social value to our student. By the way, let me just tell you what that means. Social value, it's called social role valorization. You don't want to do anything that detracts from your student and makes their situation look, okay, I hate this word, but more pathetic, okay? That wasn't nice to say about people with disabilities, but I hope you get what I mean when people, they feel really sorry for them, and then they watch you bathing them, and then it gets even like whatever. One of the examples, I made this woman really mad. She took it very personally. I wasn't saying this about any woman or man in particular. In fact, I'll tell you what's happened to two people. I'll use a man as an example. I was talking about this good-looking woman that was one of our student teachers, and when she walked down with our students, like all the boys in the school were like, "Hi, Miss blah, blah, blah," Then they would start talking to our students. "How are you?" And then we got a guy, Tim. Tim was really good looking, and he ran track, and he was like so sweet. He was just one of those guys that you just like, just the nicest guy ever. Well, all the girls in the school were in love with him. Well, probably a few gay boys, but the girls were just in love with him, like just crazy. And they would be coming up to our kids, blah, 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 right? So the point is that what really happened is through raising the social value of the kids by putting these, good looking people next to them, or it could be Michael Jordan or Barack Obama, somebody who brings real value, putting those people next to the students actually raised their value. So when you're thinking about putting students in situations where they're going to be seen by other students, always think about making their social value as high as you can. Okay? Like one of the things I don't like, I see this at a lot of schools, everybody gets in line and all the seniors in the high school, especially because high school students don't walk in line. Okay? So don't put your students in line. All right? I've had people say, well, but they get lost. Well, then teach them how not to. Because nobody in high school stands in a line anymore. So when you have a whole bunch of people standing in a line, right, it takes away from their social value, just automatically. Because people go, oh, there's the special ed kids. That's why they line up. That's why they line up. They're special ed. Do you see what I mean? People start making assumptions and all sorts of things. So anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that tangent, but social role valorization, or ensuring that we keep the role of the student the optimal place. I didn't say that right. If we think of the optimal place to keep the student where his or her value is increased, we'll make better choices about what we do. It doesn't mean this. Why this woman got mad at me? She was like, "So I guess if you're saying you're middle-aged and frumpy, you can't walk around this school with stupid." That's not what I said at all. But if you have a chance to, not just good-looking people, if you have a chance for, the quarterback of the football team wants to come in and read to your kids, and suddenly other people want to follow him, and I don't have to make more examples. You get what I mean, and it's a really important thing to do. So I'll tell you something in a minute, a funny story about all that with social role and teaching and everything else. But I also wanted to put out there that trial and error, it's like the only way to work in this population for me that I can see. Of course, we know things. I mean, not everything is trial and error. We know some basic things about behavior and the human condition and things like that, right? So we know that's the way that is. But my point is, if you're really going to try to push a student toward promoting their strengths, increasing their abilities, teaching them new tasks and new skills, it is trial and error. You'll find a way that works really well, and then maybe one day it just quits working and you have to start on something else. Or it might be that you've tried things several different ways and nothing happens. And then somebody else comes and tries and it works the first time. And then you say, this is why you have to be confident. Then you say, ooh, it wasn't that, it was me. It wasn't the way I was presenting it, it was me. She likes her better. Kids make that known all the time, but we just tend to override it. And I think in that area, of course, sometimes you're going to work with everybody. So, I don't care what your situation is, get over it. But on the other hand, I mean, if this student is showing a preference, let that student work with that person, right? So, I mean, it makes sense to me. But the point is that when I was in my training as a social worker, one of the things that the therapist talked a lot about to me was, I was always trying to keep kids calm and things fine and da 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 da. And she would say, don't be afraid for a child to break down. Breaking down and regrouping is actually a wonderful way to build our inner strength. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of like you've heard people say that it was the most awful experience, but I'm glad for it because I became, or I did, or it's the same kind of idea. So I'm not talking about poking at kids and getting them to fall apart, but I'm saying that when we push limits, when we try new things, we're very limited because of what they can tell us as to how sophisticated we can be in putting something together that they may like or may take to, right? So don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry about trying over and over again. If a child breaks down, of course you want to help them come back, but don't overdo it. It was just hard. So, that was hard. We're going to try another way now. Keep this idea going because many students with severe, profound disabilities are very easily overwhelmed. They just don't have a lot of skills and they don't have a lot of abilities for self-regulating and things like that. So, all kinds of things could be interfering. I mean, I always thought about this. What if you had cerebral palsy, right? And you really couldn't move your body and you had this itch, like sometimes itches and you just can't stop scratching it, you're almost bleeding, you just can't stop. I can't even imagine sitting there with something itching like that and I couldn't do anything about it. I know that sounds like a silly example, but it to me the reason the example's so powerful is because it's such a simple thing we never even think about. So anyway, there'll be a lot of reasons that things fall apart, and don't worry about it. I think that in this particular area of special ed, if you aren't okay with chaos, you probably shouldn't go into this area. Let me see what else. If there were a couple more things. I talked about the ecological part. Was one more thing, I think. Oh, I did. I just asked you to briefly comment on the individualized family service plan, the IFSP, and how it differs from the IEP. Just take a quick look at that. I've asked you how it'd be better for kids with children with severe, profound disabilities. I'll tell you a big reason right now is that a lot of it's home-based, and a lot of it is based on family input, much more than the IEP. So that's part of the answer to that. But just take a look at it because it is a different system of services, and I'd be happy to talk more about it if anybody wants to know more about it. But I like the IFSP. It's the Birth to 3 programs. I like the Birth to 3 programs as evidenced in the IFSP. I like those for their family-centered orientation and their belief that young children learn best within their family life and within the natural environments around them. Well, the same is true for kids with severe and profound disabilities. I sometimes wonder why we can't do more of an IFSP with these students, but that's for another conversation, I guess. And I also asked you about this other question about how you see the family role in decision making in IEP planning, how you see that as more crucial. I had a hard time writing that prompt, and well, I didn't have a hard time writing it. I just looked at the wording and thought that might not be right, because I don't want to say that family involvement is not crucial in any IEP, because it is. But there are characteristics, traits, and all of the services and things that surround a person with a severe, profound disability that just think about that for a little bit and how you envision parents in that situation, because it's definitely a different kind of alliance. At least it has been, in my experience. So I think I'm trying to think if I have anything else. I'll come back to you if I do. Um, yeah, and I just wanted you to take a try with the case study, the on the academic domains and using the state standard and stuff. I put some of the early state standards there. Here's my real story, so you don't like, get all crazy. Um, I mean, you need to pick a standard, obviously, that matches up what you're doing, okay? But I am no fan of state standards. So if you think that, like, I'm looking for a particular math standard somewhere that matches this, I am not. I want you to just demonstrate how you can take a standard and then break it down to something that's really pretty um, elementary based on what the standard is about. So, okay. All right, so I think that's it. That's it for today. I thought I would just end with a little funny story. I said I'd come back to it. We're talking about integrating things and about raising someone's status. I came into a high school one day, and the cheerleaders were standing at this front table selling donuts and stuff, and they're in their little cheerleading outfits and stuff, and they were cute and all that. And anyway, I I just noticed it really. Went to the class and I met, I guess this guy's probably 18, a guy with Down syndrome who was freaking hilarious. I mean, he was so hilarious. We were walking down the hall in October, and I tell you that on purpose because this guy and I can't, I can't think of his name now. Anyway, we were walking down the hall, and this young woman, the high school's coming toward us, dressed all in goth or whatever, and he goes, "Hey, hey, Halloween's not till the 31st." I mean, I just thought I'd die laughing. I mean, he was like, he had these little flip off things and everything else and stuff. So, anyway, I said to this teacher that I was there to do supervision for, she was talking about him working on counting money, and he had a really hard time with money combinations and things that he was going to need. And I said, well, put him with the cheerleaders down there, you know. And she said that won't work. And she said, we have spent this whole year, or maybe it was more than that because she'd been there a little while, trying to get him to stop staring at women's breasts. That's all it is, whatever. So I said, well, what if the rule is that if he wants to go make change and count things and do all that with the girls, then he can't look at their breasts. And if he does, then he can't stay. And it worked. It really worked. She went down. He still, well, back then he was helping with the bake sales every now and then, and he loved it. He was Mr. Social Butterfly, had a joke for everything. So he's right up front, got his shtick going and everything else, and he wasn't looking at women's breasts, or at least when no one was looking, he wasn't looking at anyone. And so it's kind of a funny story to me. But the point is, it's integrating, the skill. It's generalizing the skill. It's upping his social value because he's with the cheerleaders and he's learning an important relationship task, which is that men in public do not stare at women's breasts. It's impolite. So anyway, that was a good story for me. And I hope that when I see you again, I will be posting, actually very soon, I'll be posting, hopefully tomorrow, 7 through 10, and that's quite a bit of stuff. So when I see you then, we'll probably have a little bit more to talk about. So I hope you're doing well, and I hope the resources are helpful on D2L, and please get in touch if you have any questions. Okay, take care.